we disagree with. It has a lot to do with, of course, the way the media is today, very liberal, and so well, how should I say, disagree necessarily on some of the things that are in the media, mostly related to being against Republicans and stuff like that, except of course for Fox News, which is, as I've said before, thank God there is a Fox News, but we'll get into that some other time. At any rate, we're going to talk about a variety of subjects. Rob has just arrived in the studio, however, so we really haven't had a list, but Rob and I have never had a problem talking about things. So this is going to be what we normally talk about when we're at Starbucks and the Cajun Kitchen, which, by the way, is a very good restaurant. I don't have any stock in the company and so on, but I think that you would enjoy the food there if you haven't been there already. Probably have. It's a very busy place. They have four locations here in the Santa Barbara area, 3 at least. At any rate, so we're going to talk about a variety of things, and one of the topics, if we get right off the top, is the very thing that's in the headlines now about the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband in San Francisco, which he took a hit from a hammer into the head. He's an 83-year-old guy, by the way, something like 82, 83-year-old guy and so on. So it had to do some damage, and some other damage too. I assume he's still in the hospital.
No, he was released.
Terrible things. Of course, you hear a lot of this political stuff and so on. The Republicans are bad mouthing it, and but the Democrats, are using it as actually they're going the other side, the same. This is the new normal when they're going to be attacking Democrats, I guess they have to say, because they don't mention the other Kavanaugh and the baseball, the Republican baseball team, and
Steve Scalise,
and the guy that's from running for the governor of New York City,
Lee Zeldin.
Attacked, Zeldin twice, by the way. One was he endangered his own children. As a matter of fact, they were after that. At any rate, so they're politicalizing policy. What is it?
Politicizing.
Politicizing. Thank you. Politicizing these events and so on. What's your take on it?
My take is, like the world, the reaction has to be complicated. Some of these people are just kind of crazy.
Yeah. All of them are, but
what my reaction based on media, though, is that the media that I've seen so far all seem to want to blame Donald Trump, Republicans, MAGA Republicans. Yeah. Now I'll mention just Rob Reiner, who's had a terrific career in comedy, and but he was, I think, meathead in All of the Family. Anyway, he's a Trump hater, and he says Trump is directly responsible. Well, then it goes to his kind of rhetoric. He said at one time or another is directly responsible, and I peeled back the layers and I finally said, so you mean not directly responsible? Because to me, somebody who's directly responsible would be either someone who goes into Pelosi's house and hits him, or someone who hands him a hammer and says, there, Pelosi's in there, hit him.
Yeah.
People like that, I would say, were directly responsible.
Yeah.
People who voiced their political opinions about some stuff that some crazy person carried way too far and went off and did something bad with, those people are not directly responsible.
Yeah.
After all, isn't the world full of people whose opinions may in fact be pretty flawed or even have bad effects, and we talk about that? Now, if some crazy person, I can say something completely truthful, like there have been criminals who've come into the United States from Mexico. Now, a crazy person might hear that and say, Mexican immigrants are bad thing A, B, and C, and they might try to harm Mexican immigrants. Nothing I said, and nothing I ever will say, is supposed to mean harm Mexican immigrants.
Yeah.
Nothing of the sort. I'm not saying it, by the way, because I don't mean it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But the thing is, when crazy people hear something, what it means could be anything to them.
Yeah.
So
That's mostly on the Democratic side, isn't it, too? It seems
Mostly.
They make it out. They make it out to be. Like, that guy just mentioned, the baseball team, the Kavanaugh, is this guy, Zeldin, their name is in New York. And as, others, I just heard tonight that the guy that's running for the Senate in, I guess in Colorado or someplace and so on, was attacked with the guy came at it with a knife, a Republican.
I missed that one. But one more thing about the guy who attacked Pelosi, by the way, an illegal immigrant from Canada,
Yeah.
someone who overstayed his visa and has been living in a commune in Berkeley as a nudist and some sort of activist. In other words, doesn't sound like what they call a MAGA Republican to me.
Yeah.
But
None of which is really that bad.
I never said it was.
No,
I'm just saying that
I'm just saying that this is supposed to be indicative of a guy. There's a lot of people probably living in nudist communes in that same Berkeley place and so on.
More
and they're
power
illegal,
to them.
And illegal besides.
they're not in my house. I couldn't care what they're wearing.
Yeah, right.
But here we are with it was somebody else. Oh, this was on MSNBC. Of course, everyone over there is a complete left-wing loon, including their token Republican Joe Scarborough, who married Zbigniew Brzezinski's daughter Mika.
Yeah.
So and if she's as left-wing loon
His
as
father was a senator from Georgia.
and she's
Democrat.
as left-wing loon as they come, and she said that it was clear that this was, this was Republican doing.
Yeah.
And I look at that.
She said that?
She said, I don't have the exact quote on me.
I know, but I'm just, you
yes,
got the gist
she
of
did.
it, yeah.
The gist of it was that she was saying,
Blaming the Republicans.
This is Republicans' fault. This is Trump's fault. And I don't get it. And by the way, remember, you and I have mentioned before, people like to come down on like a ton of bricks on Trump, whose personality definitely has its sore points.
Yeah.
But we didn't vote for him because of his personality quirks.
Yeah.
We voted for him because we were hoping that his policies would be something like the things that he said.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get the wall I wanted, but his policies were something like the things that he said, and they had a lot of good results.
Right.
So, someone wants to say, well, he cheated on his wife. I don't know if he did or he didn't. But I'm not voting for wife cheating on wives. I'm voting for a border policy and a foreign policy and things that I think might be good for most of the people of the U.S. And hopefully the world. But as an American voting for an American president, the people of the U.S. have to come first in my view.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting take on it and that. But are we do you think that we are in fact going to have more violence? And is this any, in your understanding of history, I can get into some of those, like the attack. There was an attack on the floor of the Congress, and the guy was disabled for life in 1865. Of course, that had to do with slavery and so on. Before the South seceded from the Union, it was obviously a big topic. And they came, and I think he came in from the Senate or something. Like came in from the House of Representatives into the Senate and beat up this guy, who was a leader of the abolitionists in the Senate and so on. And he was hurt for he was not. He didn't recover from it exactly.
He was never the same.
Never the same. Never the same.
Was that Stevens? I can't think.
Yeah, he was. I can't remember. He was one of the leaders of it and so on. He's been portrayed in a lot of movies and that. But he was one of the leading abolitionists.
Yeah, he got the crap beat out of him.
Yeah,
and that was with a big, thick wooden cane.
And of course, there's Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr.
Oh yeah. Now, Burr was vice president at the time.
At the time, right. And I think Alexander Hamilton was Secretary of the Treasury.
And by the way, Burr got himself right back to Washington.
Yeah.
And he managed to hide behind his office and avoid being prosecuted and eventually skedaddled.
Yeah.
But that was a good one in itself because those duels were illegal by then.
Mm-hmm. What was illegal?
Those duels.
Yeah, okay, but they were still doing them, obviously. There's a
Yes.
certain place they could go, and which is where Hamilton and he ended up, of course.
Yes, a place I've been, Weehawken, New Jersey.
In fact, I think even Andrew Jackson, this took place in 1800. Andrew Jackson didn't come into play and so until much later than that. I think he was involved in a duel of some kind, in the late 1800s. He got hurt. He took a bullet or something like that.
Okay, I don't know about that. I do know Jackson was was he the 12th president? I think he was
Something like 1829.
Okay,
28, but he ran in 1824, but he didn't become famous until the War of 1812.
Somebody actually came at him, and
Maybe that's
when
what
he
it
was
was.
president, had a Derringer,
Yeah.
stepped forward, fired center of mass. Derringers have very short barrels, and that means that the bullet energy is going to be fairly low. And Jackson wore a double-breasted suit with very large brass buttons, and the bullet struck a button.
Yeah, I might be mistaken then. That wasn't a duel.
And in fact, he turned
duels
straight
come
toward
back.
him and smacked the guy with his cane.
Maybe a duel isn't such a bad idea, actually. It wouldn't eliminate some of the things. Although assassination is, in fact, a form of, not a government, but a part of the political system of many places, and especially in the dictatorships. For example, Putin, he's gotten rid of a few people that didn't agree with him. The guy in North Korea that killed his brother. I think the Chinese, when a new emperor came in, he had to kill off all his relatives. And of course, that's long since gone on. But I'm sure that the Chinese kill off people that disagree with them too.
Now, how did Stalin end? Because I think that
They hung
Khrushchev did he Stalin?
After he was dead.
Yeah, okay, but I think
And
that
his girlfriend too, by the way.
I think he actually managed to expire of natural causes.
Who? Mussolini? No, they shot him.
I said Stalin.
Oh, I'm sorry. Stalin, yeah, he died of natural causes and so on.
I
But
think he was the first leader of the Soviet Union to die of natural causes.
Is that right? Yeah. Well,
Or was Lenin? What got Lenin?
Lenin, no, he died of a heart attack. He was a heart problem and so
praise the
on.
Lord.
But they did away with, in fact, did away with that. Stalin, for example, destroyed his army, all his officer corps, just prior to the Second World War. So when Hitler invaded, he really had no officers left. In fact, he had to get them. He saved a few, and he pulled them out of the stalags or whatever they call them, and so on.
Stalags, yeah.
in Siberia, so he could have some officer corps and so
Gulag.
on. But there again, I always like to tell people how many assassination attempts do you think there was against Hitler?
You've told me the number. It's a big number. Was it
20?
Yeah.
This started back in 1923 when he was first getting started, but there was a number of attempts, all of which failed, and he ended up killing him. Again, he committing suicide at the end, which is he knew it because, by the way, he knew about Mussolini. They had killed him. Then they dragged the bodies to Milan, I believe it was, and they hung up upside down in a gas station, and that's the picture that Hitler saw.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to end up that way.
No,
Because that's probably the way he might have ended up.
So let's return to your question.
Yeah.
You're saying
assassination is part of it. So on. The question is, do you think it's going to be violence is going to? For example, if the Republicans take over now the House, which they probably will, maybe the Senate too. You think there's going to be much more? You think, for example, Kevin McCarthy might have to increase his bodyguard by a factor of 10 or more.
Well, anybody could do a bad thing. I have not noticed Republicans taking a lot of shots at Democrats, with the possible exception of there were, of course, a few people who attacked abortion doctors.
Yeah.
But in general, as far as attacking Democrat politicians, I'm not seeing much of it, but it could happen. I think it usually follows violent rhetoric, and it follows the recruiting from violent groups. So, for instance, if the Democrats decide to recruit more from, let's say, the ranks of Antifa, then I would expect there to be more political violence. If they stick more with the people who talk about ideas rather than take to the streets, then I would expect less.
Yeah, but then you hear this Chuck Schumer, the head of the Senate Senate Majority Leader in the Senate and so on, yelled at Kavanaugh.
Ah, yes.
Remember that thing? You're going to pay the price or something like that. And he had anger
price,
in his voice.
There'll be consequences.
And guess what?
Yeah.
There was a guy that went out and say, "Oh, these guys said it's okay."
And in fact, wouldn't you want to just step over and say to the senator, "Yeah, Mr. Schumer, tell me right now, will you say that I'll pay a price? I mean, I'm a Supreme Court justice, and I'm required to rule on this stuff, preferably with the Constitution.
Yeah.
So what am I going to pay a price for, and what price are you thinking of? And is that something, I mean, I look at all this stuff in terms of, is this something prescribed by law? I'm going to do a little bit of a side just because I heard this on the radio today. Someone was saying, well, if the Republicans take Congress, then will Joe Biden have to rule by executive order?
Yeah.
And I looked at that, I thought, I don't know how many of you have examined the Constitution, but executive orders are not contemplated. They're talking about it as though executive orders were laws. Executive orders have force within the executive branch as guidance for how agencies within the executive branch conduct themselves, because the president is the chief executive. But law, all law at the federal level is made by Congress. It's in the Constitution.
Power of the purse too, by the way.
Yes, it's Article 1, Section 1, very first sentence
Yeah.
says that all legislative power is vested in the Congress, which will be constituted as, and then it begins to describe how Congress is constituted. But that's where the lawmaking comes. So the president doesn't get to make law.
Yeah.
And the only time that an executive order has force is when it directs members of the executive branch, agencies,
the agency that he's talking about,
to
right?
do things.
Yeah, like the
And-
immigration.
And those things have to be within the power, that's been granted by the Congress and by the Constitution. The power doesn't come from nowhere. This isn't like you've got a magic lamp and your first wish is, I wish for infinite wishes.
Yeah.
No.
Where does the executive order come from? Is it in the Constitution at all? That
No.
He has that power to do something like
it's,
that?
It's not. It's just a formulation, since he is the chief
Executive,
executive
right.
branch and he's the chief executive.
Yeah.
He will make his, they could have been executive memos, they could have been requests for, it could have been anything, but
Yeah.
that's how it's come down to us now. And the executive orders are listed numerically by the order they're given in. So you can look up online any executive order you like.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course. You can. It's all public. That's
I've done
the
it
one thing
many a
about
time.
Freedom of the press. That all that stuff is online basically. You can look it up, type it
But
in, and boom, you get the whole works.
I started looking that stuff up when I got curious about the John F. Kennedy executive orders that related to what they thought might be necessary in the aftermath of a nuclear war.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting and hairy stuff there.
Yeah.
But most of it basically makes the country a temporary dictatorship.
Yeah.
Let's say for
In
nice
a sense,
things.
it does, and just the executive order becomes that he's the king and he can do whatever he wants, unless it's challenged by the legislative branch, and it goes to the Supreme Court and is turned down, which has happened. In fact, it just happened with regard to the forgiving all the student debt. It's now being adjudicated by the Supreme Court.
Any law offensive to the Constitution is null.
Yeah.
On the other hand, they may hang you before that's determined.
But I mean, that has to go through adjudication and so all that. It takes time to do all that stuff. And in the meantime, well, of course, it may not, nothing happened. But
Yeah.
that it seems to be. You keep in mind that when the country was formed, one of the things they wanted to stay away from was a king. They didn't want a king, but they knew they had to have an executive. That was the. I haven't studied it that hard, but they knew they had to put something in there about a president and so on. It wasn't their first thought, put it that way.
No, what they were just trying to limit the damage that these things can do.
Yeah, right.
And in fact, that's the important thing to know about the. Now, I happen to think that the Constitution, while far from perfect, is fairly good.
Yeah.
But they did not have great hopes for what government might accomplish. They didn't think that government was the agency in the world that accomplished things.
Yeah.
They thought that people and institutions, churches, associations, those accomplish things, and that government was trying to play referee and keep the peace and defend the nation. So as they made provision for that, all the rest of the checks and balances, they were attempting to limit the damage it might do. Because you have to acknowledge that any power in the hands of any people
Yeah.
may do damage.
Yeah.
They said, well, can we make that less likely? Can we give people recourse?
Yeah.
Recourse is a great thing where you can say, you know that thing you did to me that you shouldn't do? You're going to have to take that back now.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful bit of recourse, and if people,
But that takes litigation, though, wouldn't it?
it takes litigation,
gotta
it
go
takes
through a court.
time, and
Supreme Court, if that.
and the
necessary.
look, we can handle a few corrupt administrations. Once the people are corrupt, all bets are off.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's what's true as a government anyway. But kind of getting back to the idea here, this it just seems to me that well, I won't say it's increased. Although I think what really happens is it gets glorified by the press. They love this kind of stuff to do, and that pictures that sells a lot of pillows, and that given the guy that's on all the time selling more than pillows these days. He sells shoes and soap and God knows towels, sheets.
Don't be coy. You were talking about Mike Lindell,
Yeah,
the
Mike
pillow
Lindell,
guy.
right. He's a nice guy, I suppose, and so on and so on. But you see him a lot of them, and he likes the advertises and that. And of course, that's what these networks and stuff live off of, their advertising. But anyway, that it seems to be it serves them. Like this guy now that went into Pelosi's house. He's famous. Maybe that's what he wanted to begin. I don't think in this case he probably wasn't. He was out to get Nancy Pelosi. Where's Nancy?
I haven't a clue. I can't even imagine what the guy's state of mind could have been,
Yeah.
much less his intentions. But let's say that he was a nut who maybe somewhere along the line, maybe some of his politics
Yeah.
conceivably agreed with mine. So what? No matter what somebody's politics are, including if they're exactly like mine, I don't want them doing any mayhem in my name. I don't want them gratuitously hurting people. I don't want them stealing, lying, cheating. I don't want them to do anything that reflects badly on the rest of us.
Right, exactly.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
Do not do it. If you're thinking that you're going to make me happy, it won't.
Which, of course, it does about the January 6th. I don't think Donald Trump really meant to have those people break into the Congress. I think he knew
I'm
he
sure
was
he
going to do
didn't.
it. Like he's encouraging him to do it? I just
No.
don't think that's the case.
And
it was wrong, basically. But
of course it's wrong. But on the other hand, if being outside and demonstrating and saying, I don't think that was rightly decided, or I think that there were irregularities that deserve further
Right.
consideration.
right, I think
All of that stuff is well within the normal First Amendment, what do they call it, petitioning for a redress of grievances. And if somebody wants to say undoing an election, well, if an election were stolen, and I don't know if it was or it wasn't, but if it were, then asking for some kind of change or redress does not strike me as weird or unjust.
right.
And
And they tried to put it through courts, and they said, William Barr was the Attorney General of the United States, and he was a Republican and so on, and he couldn't find anything.
All right, well, here, my view is that it was stolen in several states, but all of those states certified their votes.
Yeah.
And as such, under federal law, Joe Biden is the President of the United States.
Right.
So I don't like it, and I think that some of it was, I could be wrong, so maybe all of it was above board.
Yeah.
But even if it weren't, the federal laws satisfied those states, certified their votes, even if I thought some of them shouldn't, doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
done, and Joe Biden is the president.
Right. That's been a lot of. It's a messy process. Let's face it. When there's 360,000 people, which is what it takes to run an election, on the level of all the precincts and all the different people who are involved in it and so on, somebody's going to make a mistake or just not do the right thing. he may, may have maybe some kind of political motivation.
Oh,
so
come on. And any 100 people, 5 of them are probably criminals.
Yeah, and I guess with hire, I guess they're even having trouble hiring people now to work the polls and all that stuff. Well, I guess we beat the heck out of this subject there and that, but it seems to me that it's pretty much it's the same thing over and over again. That people are a protest in general. Like I've always said, protest by its own definition is violent. That's what it's what it means. Protest means some kind of violence. You're going to, even if it's blocking a freeway, even, which is what they do a lot of times, blocking intersections and so on, is causing people to be. Who knows what will happen at that point?
On the other hand, if people's protest is a bunch of folks standing outside the White House, either the Trump White House or the Biden White House, and yelling, "Not my president," it doesn't strike me as violence.
Yeah, right. But there's some people in that audience that can always and maybe encourage other people to do it later on. They're going to we'll do something else. So that's what the elections are all about. Like I always say to people, that this election is one election, but this is not the important election. It's the next election, and there will be an election next 2 years from now. Democracy, believe me, is alive and well. But alive and thriving. This is still an experiment. That's what I always say about our thing.
And my dad said, "And there's no proof it works."
Yeah, exactly. You're right. It seems to keep going pretty well, but we have a country here that's very prosperous and so on. But I have no complaints about my life as far as the opportunities that have been presented to me. Some failed, some didn't.
I would like to see people analyze and discuss democracy and the Constitution and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's important to know what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Like, why do we have voting?
Mm-hmm.
And why do we have limitations on government? You could probably tell me, but I can't think of who I'm quoting. But if we were ruled by angels, there would be no need for any limitations on government.
Yeah, I don't know who said that,
but we're not ruled by angels. We're ruled by men and women.
Men and women.
And men and women, God love them, they're bad news.
Right.
And when they're the worst news when they have power over others.
Benedict Arnold, and then of course Aaron Burr, and then the guy that shot Lincoln.
John Wilkes Booth.
John Wilkes Booth, and so on. These are people that decided to do it their own way.
And here he was, by the way, Booth, whom I despise, and I'm glad he was destroyed. But Booth, in killing Lincoln, yelled,
"Under the tyrant" or something, didn't he?
"Sic semper tyrannis, ever thus with tyrants."
Yeah, tyrant. Yeah, right.
So Booth thought that he was the hero.
Yeah.
I think he was the villain, but he thought he was the hero.
Yeah.
He thought that he would probably be the toast of Montreal because he planned to escape to Montreal.
Yeah, he went the wrong direction.
Well, things started going.
I understand. Yeah.
Things started going sideways on him pretty quickly. Of course, that was supposed to be a decapitation of the government. It was a multi-pronged attack on not just Lincoln but several others.
Yeah, right. Cabinet members, right.
Yeah, cabinet members who were supposed to be killed and were just badly injured.
Yeah.
But and of course he also broke his leg when he leaped out of the box and down onto the stage.
Yeah, right.
And that changed things. But anyway, what I was just getting at is people often, they think they're doing a good thing. Here's somebody who thinks that he's getting rid of a tyrant.
Yeah, they've justified what their act.
Right. In the story that they tell in their head, they're the hero.
Yeah. They think it's one of those things that the violence that they think they're doing the right thing, and it's not the system we operate under. It is in fact, if you want it, like I tell people about the January 6th, that those people out there that were all out there doing so and so forth. Well, your real objective is accomplished through elections. Mm-hmm. That's what as you well know, I really believe that's the power of the system. It may not be perfect, It may not be what you want, obviously, the result of what you want, although, as I just said before, there will be another one. There'll always be another election. It's like Adolf Hitler. He had his last election in March in 1933, and he wanted to be elected. He had run for office. He had election in January of that same month, and he was the major party. He didn't have a majority, but he was the major party. Now he wanted to have another election 2 months later, just to prove that he was being accepted by it. In fact, he got rid of all the other parties and so on. Unfortunately, he won because he only won, but they voted less, and that's the last time he had an election. They get very messy and so on, but that's the way they are. Like I say, in a way, the whole concept of government and representative government is flawed because of what we say about the people and so on. But again, as I said, Churchill said, it's better than the alternative. I always like to tell people that being a German up until from 1933 on to even up to 1941, before he invaded Russia, it was nice. It was good to be a German, except of course if you were a Jew, and of course you kept your mouth shut and about preaching about the political parties were out the window, and nobody got elected. But even if you said something wrong, your neighbor said something wrong about Hitler and all that stuff. The little black car would show up at the middle of the night, take the guy away, and you'd never see him again. That was the end of him.
But you had a super highway, the Autobahn. You had
you
had a job.
He did the Volkswagen car and that, and Mussolini and the canals and all that stuff and so on. And in fact, they were very the workers. Everybody had a job, working fine, and so on. And then of course Hitler went ahead and decided to invade the rest of the world.
It went downhill.
It was when you have a good thing going. But in this country, for example, in this election now, tomorrow, on Tuesday and so on, Wednesday, the press will be talking about who's going to be running for president, and the campaign for 2024 will start the next day. In fact, it's really already started, according to Hillary Clinton.
I'm already starting to see announcements from the administration that it's going to take a while to count the votes. And I'm starting to think, wait a second, this is looking like a red wave. If a bunch of the crucial elections, you say, oh, well, it took a long time. Oh, we found some other vote. It's going to start, looking again if this happens.
Yeah, that's true.
Look again like someone might say, I don't have complete confidence in that. I'd sure like to see this stuff done with paper ballots that you can count and tabulate up, and you say, there, we're done this evening.
Yeah.
And as far as, well, what about votes that arrive late? They're late and thus not counted.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. You know when election day is. We give you this much time to get it in.
Right.
If that's what it takes, just like it used to be, and maybe again one of these days, you literally showed up in person on election day.
Yeah.
Unless you had some real, an absentee ballot was for somebody who was literally going to be out of the state or in the hospital or something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you showed up on the day of the election, you cast your vote, and they knew tomorrow what it was.
Yeah, and that happens and so on. It brings up the idea, though, that I saw a lecture for Joe Holland, who is the auditor, and he counts the votes in this county. Mm-hmm. And for the whole county, this is for anything that they have, both on school districts and cities, elections and things like that. I was ready to, give the guy some trouble about the recent election. I think I've talked to you about this mail-in ballot business and so on.
Yes, you mentioned.
But quite honestly, I was kind of impressed with the fact this is an honest guy. I believe he was really trying to. He said he was a Democrat, and he said, but he's a really honest guy. And he said that this is basically said there's a lot of little things you have to take care of. Checking the signature on the envelope that you send your ballot in with, and counting the ballots, and counting this. You have to make sure you do certain things and so on. It's a very complicated process, really. Keep in mind, in this county alone, you're counting 200,000 votes. And we're going to elect this election now. If you look at the ballot, you're looking at maybe 50 to 100 people that are on the ballot that you're voting for. and you got to be real careful. What was it, hanging chads in Florida, things like that happen all the time, and it's a messy process. It can get very messy about it and so on. It's not as easy as you think it is. Just count the ballots. Although I remember the expression is Joe Stalin said, "I'll let you tell that
Sure.
one."
It's not who votes who
He
counts.
had elections too. Go ahead.
It's not who votes who counts. It's who counts the votes.
Counts the votes, right? He always won. I don't think he even really had an election in that. Putin did, but of course he always wins too.
By the way, another one of his would be, if I pick the candidates, you can have all the elections you want.
Yeah. And the one about killing one person is murder, and killing 1 million people
Is it the statistic?
is a statistic. And he did his share. He killed more people than Hitler ever did, that's for sure. That wasn't directly responsible. So 50 million, by the way, I think it was in 20 million or something, like 30 million in World War II alone. At any rate, I'm going to kind of beat this subject to death, but I think violence is going to be a factor we have to live with. Basically, that's what's going to happen. Hopefully, it will not become overwrought. At the night of the election, when they see a lot of, in Portland, Oregon, or someplace like that, where the governor, by the way, might end up being a Republican. And I think there's even one seat because Oregon actually gained a seat now in the last census, and that, as I said in the show I did previously with Mr. Worthen, I think that seat could easily go to a Republican. So the new seat will be a Republican seat for Oregon. That's probably the extent of it. But if they take over the House, I wouldn't want to own a Wendy's franchise in this country. Put it that way. And you know what happened there.
Yeah, people take.
They start burning stuff down. I gotta say, they'll start the protests, which will get out of hand very quickly.
All right,
I hope that doesn't happen, because there'll be another election. You'll have another chance.
In the intersection,
Guaranteed.
In the intersection between politics and TV, I just wanted to say that the Paul Pelosi beating thing, there's still stuff to see here. One is, this was the home of. Okay, Paul Pelosi is worth $120 million.
Yeah.
And his wife is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. So they should have some pretty good security cameras around there.
Well, dude, go ahead.
Yeah, and
I'll explain what that is.
and
They do have that.
Yes, and some of it is, in fact, even stuff that's supposedly monitored by the Capitol Police.
Exactly.
But I'm looking forward to footage from that stuff to see how Mr. DePape got in.
Yeah.
I'm also looking forward to any police body cam footage from when they came. Now, there's one other thing to say about this, and this is in the concept of reporting and fake news. There's a political site called Politico. It's very much left-leaning, but anyway, they have some content, and some of it's factual. And since it had been reported in several places that not Paul Pelosi and not Mr. DePape, but a third person had opened the door for the San Francisco police when the police came, and now that has left the narrative, and they're saying no, that's not the case. The reason that people thought so was that the police. We all know who DePape was. He was the guy who was struggling with the hammer and who hit Pelosi. We all know who Pelosi was, and they were both present. And someone called them, Pelosi called them, and someone opened the door. And in the police report, it originally read that the door was opened by an unknown party. Now, since they knew Pelosi and his attacker, you would think that the unknown party were a third person.
Yeah.
Apparently misreported, but Politico
Really?
started screaming about how right-wing sites.
Yeah. Somebody was accomplice to the whole thing.
But the Politico was saying that right-wing sources were throwing around this false narrative, and I said, well, gee, where'd they get that? Because as it turns out, until the police corrected their report,
Yeah.
Politico cited the third person as well.
Yeah.
So where did we get it? We got it from you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So don't get on your high horse too quickly.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, interesting to see. But the bottom line is the guy was, he did it.
Yeah.
And maybe he opened the door for the cops. Who knows? Because how did Pelosi end up in the bathroom? Was he already hit with a hammer?
No, he called from the bathroom. He was actually not hit until the police came in.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then he and the this is only the way it's coming out in the report. I wasn't there and I haven't seen the footage. But
interesting.
But at any rate, let's see. Pelosi was struck twice in the head, but he also had some wounds on his arms.
Yeah. Right.
So he got hit a bunch, apparently.
Yeah. Well, we hope that doesn't happen, but unfortunately, that's just the process that happens. And people, like I say, when the Republicans, you'll say, as you indicated already, they're going to say, well, it was stolen. The Americans now will say that it was stolen because of voter, all these laws that were passed in Georgia and Texas and that, of people stopping people from voting, which of course is bullshit. Excuse my language, but bull roar.
Hilarious double influence in Georgia. Stacey Abrams, who was running for governor, she was saying that these laws were all voter suppression.
Yeah.
The thing is, they're coming out. The vote is up, not down.
Yeah, right.
They're saying, well,
by a lot.
Just because the vote is up doesn't mean votes weren't suppressed.
Yeah.
Well, it does mean you're going to have to make an awfully good case.
Yeah, right.
And you're going to have
if everybody voted that you said what couldn't vote. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Or are you going to show me that, like, whose vote got suppressed?
Especially if she loses.
Did somebody come along and say, take out a paint chip? No, your skin's too dark. You can't vote.
Yeah, right.
Because how does this work? Anyway, I don't know, and I'm looking forward to their explanation and evidence.
That's what they did. That's like they did with Donald Trump to illegally, they were after him for, like I say, when he's at the top of the elevator. What's her name? Maxine Waters wanted to impeach him. He didn't get down the elevator yet. Of course, that's not true because he wasn't elected yet. But on the night he was elected, she wanted him impeached.
Oh yeah.
Right off the bat. I haven't heard much from her lately, by the way.
Well, if you do, it will still sound like the ravings.
Well, guess what? We got 3/4 of the show already, and that's all we talked about. I'm going to change the subject completely.
Oh, please do.
Elon Musk. What do you think? He bought Twitter. He's the richest guy in the world. Freedom of speech. You think Trump's going to get his Twitter account back?
Well, Trump.
Should he?
Of course he should.
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, I'm not sure it will do him any good. It might not even do the Republicans any good. We might be better off if he tweeted less.
His mouth shut.
I thought that he might have been better off if he tweeted less. And here's why he did not think so. He didn't think so because he was probably sitting there saying, "This is how I got elected."
Yeah.
So how could it be bad?
Yeah, right, exactly.
And
I'm not so sure about that either.
It's difficult to argue with success. In fact, success teaches you nothing. Only failure teaches you something.
Yeah.
So you can say you might have done 50 stupid ass things, but had things break your way. But having won, you might be saying those were great things to do.
Yeah.
And that could include tweeting way the heck too much.
Well, I could say I would like to tell the story about he has news conferences on his way to the helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yes.
reporters were hanging out in the street and they'd yell at him and stuff, and he'd stop and he'd ask for him. He stayed so long that they had to refuel the helicopter
Yeah.
before he left. How they did that exactly, I'm not sure, but he couldn't, I'll give it to Joe Biden. He walks out. When you get a bad question that he doesn't want to answer, he just walks away from it. I'll give him credit for that one. The press is not too friendly to politicians and so on. Maybe that's not the way they should be. But again, that's one of those things that that's how they sell pillows. They want to get these expressions and so on.
But I thought that
from people that they can sell pillows.
I thought it was a selling point of Trump that lots of people didn't like him and lots of people didn't like what he had to say.
Yeah.
But I never felt like he didn't tell me his opinion. I mean,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
When the
It may
reporter
change from time to time, but
sure,
yeah.
and of course, and if you're learning anything, then your opinion should change from time to time. But if you ask Donald Trump a question and he paused to answer you, he was at least probably telling you what he thought. And to me, that's a big part of having a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
In fact, I hope to do more of what everybody should. I want to have more conversations with people who disagree with me, and I want it not as an argument, but I want to respectfully find out what they're thinking and why.
Yeah.
And that's all I really ask. I don't ask people to agree with me. That may be too great a reach. But I'm saying I like to think that the things I think I do so for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to tell you what the reason is, and also listen to why you think maybe my reason isn't as good as I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not determined that I'm right already, but I would like to eventually, at the end of our conversation, I would like to feel like I knew a little more than when I started.
Yeah, learn something from it and so on, right.
And if I'm talking with somebody who's got a better insight or additional information,
You can't change your mind.
yes, and in fact, if people who can change their mind have a problem, and at least my training was mathematician and engineer, and one of the things that we have to do is go with the evidence.
You're right.
You got better evidence, I may have to change my mind.
Right. And that and in a scientific sense, that might be won't say fairly easy, but at least you're dealing with fact. There's certain things, that laws of physics, that you have to acknowledge, basically.
Well, you know
Whereas
how-
when you talk about politics and so on, but getting back to your point, yes, you want to have a discussion about change my mind. For example, abortion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good example of it, and so on. Change my mind that it's not where do you stand basically on it, and so on. Not that you're right, and so on, but I'm willing to listen to the argument, and so on.
Well, Bill Burr, the stand-up comedian who's been around for a good long while, he's kind of abrasive, and that's part of his shtick. But
Yeah.
he has a great piece about abortion, and first of all, he says, look, I would not want anybody to tell me I couldn't have an abortion if I wanted to have an abortion. He says,
Right.
he says, I don't want people telling me what to do. He says, I get that and I agree. And he says, but it still kind of seems like you're killing a baby.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't telling you not to do it, but he then he made an analogy. Analogies are never entirely correct,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
But his analogy, he says, what if I'm having a birthday, I'm going to make me a birthday cake, and I get all the ingredients, I mix up the batter, and I put it in the oven. 10 minutes later, you walk into my kitchen, grab it, and throw it on the floor. And I scream, what about my birthday cake? And he says, that wasn't a cake yet. It was going to be, you cake murdering son of a gun.
Well, that's a joke, obviously. He's a
Yes, it was. But
and all that.
and it's like I say, analogies aren't perfect.
Yeah.
But I thought he did a good comedic presentation.
I'll just give you my gist of it and so on. That women, they say that in abortion, I would check over my body. Unfortunately, it isn't just your body. You would create it as your own body. That's the nature of it and so on. When does that become life?
Yeah.
When does that have its own rights, as a matter of fact? At what point? Is it 16 weeks? When you get a heartbeat or that sort of thing, or you can have the abortion the day the baby is born. That's what they want. No restriction whatsoever, and that
Most people think that that's bad, and I think most people think that if you were to, let's say, take a morning after pill within a day or two of
that's
conceiving,
right. You can do that if you really want to get that. Do it yourself.
So obviously,
Or
somewhere
have
in
the guy
there,
wear a condom. How's that?
yeah, exactly. There's one of the most perfect decisions of all is the not getting pregnant to start with. I'm not blaming somebody. I'm just noting a fact
exactly.
a fact in the world that happens. But anyway, at some point, we like to think that a person attains a right to not be killed.
Yeah.
And since there isn't any bright dividing line, there kind of has to be a discussion about what we think that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can even see, from a liberty point of view, there may be something where it may be nobody's business. I don't know, but this is the sort of thing that it does get talked among people. It does get thrashed out. If men had nothing to say about abortion, nothing at all, it was only something that women discussed, some women would be against it.
Yeah.
And some women are against it.
Yeah.
And as to how that would shake out, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's all I'm saying is the disagreement itself, there are legitimate viewpoints on both sides of that.
Right.
So there's a reason why there are legitimate arguments. And that the people who think my way or people who think a different way, they aren't bad people just because they think that. And sometimes you become a bad person because what you do about it.
In fact, I'll tell you this, in my life, I have experienced with people that I know, I won't identify them at all and say what their relationship with me was, but I have 5 experiences that I know about where a woman got pregnant and had the child, and everything turned out fine. Everything, the person that grew up, the baby grew up, the babies were alive, and in some cases the people got married. In some cases the people they put the child up for adoption, which was again, one of my people that I know got that baby through an adoption process, and then people had they didn't have the abortion, they didn't believe in it, and they didn't have the abortion didn't take place, and so on. That person that I know, that I personally know, and so on, is alive today in 5 cases because the people decided not to have the abortion. And in every case, there turned out this is 5 people that are very good people. Well, just they're alive for one thing. I can't condemn the process, put it that way, at that point, that somebody was hurt by the fact that they had to get they didn't get the abortion, they had the child. It turned out to be fine. Anyway, he'll go back to Elon Musk and his...
Okay, about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I basically kind of like the guy for his being close to a free speech absolutist. That doesn't mean he doesn't think that you should be using the platform to foment violence or do bad things.
Yeah.
But Elon Musk is also eccentric to the point where I think of him as almost sort of a nut, and I hope that he'll hire me anyway. But anyway, but the thing is, the guy is sort of a transhumanist in that he's one of these people who hopes that someday their consciousness can be uploaded to a machine host, and basically sort of way of living forever, which I literally just don't happen to think happens.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't rule it off for that guy.
But and he would also like to go to Mars.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out either.
I'm not ruling out any of it. I'm saying
if he's the guy, anybody's going to do it, he's the one.
Why not? He's kind of unusual and out there. So far, what I like about him is he will entertain an idea that other people have already thrown away.
Yeah,
they say, "Oh, you must be crazy." Maybe not.
Maybe not. Since he's the richest guy in the world, maybe not. He paid $47 billion or some ungodly number for this Twitter company.
Yeah, somewhere
which may have been a big crowd. They had to fake that robot or something like that.
They call it, they're artificial members.
Yeah, artificial members and so on, just to sell advertising and that. And I'm not so sure that it really is. Paying $47 billion for it seems a little bit extreme.
Anyway, whether that's a good idea or not all depends on what you can do with it. I think that he's hoping to capitalize further.
Right.
I've already seen a list, a partial list at least, of celebrities who have left Twitter because Musk bought it.
Yeah.
I don't think I recognize the name of even one of them. So
there you go.
That's
the thing about this.
A different kind of celebrity than I remember.
The media makes them celebrities, but I've never heard of them. I didn't know what they did, but so on. Anyway, that's his game and so on. And of course, he has the money to do it. If he can fail, he could lose $47 billion. That wouldn't hurt him too bad. Put it that way.
Yeah, and I think that he got some financing and some participation from some other heavy hitters. And there's so much that can be done with a platform like that.
Yes.
And I see people like Jimmy Fallon, a late night host, going on about how what Musk is doing is dumb, and I look at that and I think, all right, now which of you guys is the guy with the with the $400 billion, and because and of course Musk will tell you, yeah, some of the things that I come up with or some of the things that we try don't work,
Yeah, right.
but enough of them work, I have a hard time really coming down too hard on somebody who does that well.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're doing an evil thing, of course, come down on them. But when it comes to, am I going to tell this guy that I know better than he does? Even as I used to write to Trump every couple of weeks on the White House.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
yeah,
all
you told
I
me
was
that
doing
once,
was
yeah.
I was giving him my best thoughts.
Yeah, right.
And the thoughts of a lifetime. This might help you. That might help
Did he
you.
ever
this-
were write you back?
Never. And I
Did
didn't.
anybody write you
Nor
back?
did I. I expected nothing. For all I know, I was shouting into a well. Doesn't matter to me. I wanted to have offered the
Right.
best thoughts that I could offer.
And that's what social media really should be. These just sent a message to the President of the United States.
And what I wanted.
Somebody must have read it.
What I wanted to do here was, have an opportunity to nudge something in a good direction.
Yeah.
Conceivably, did not want to have said, well, who knows what he might have done, but I never told anybody.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't tell them your good idea, it sure won't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Got to make it happen. Which, by the way, is what we're doing right here. We have a free, by the way, anybody that wants to do a show here in downtown Santa Barbara, in Santa Barbara, you have an audience out there that, by the way, this goes worldwide, universal wide. If they had people living on Mars, there's a satellite going around Mars that probably could be broadcasted to anybody that's living on Mars. That's this is free speech. This is a soapbox that you're not going to turn down. Well, actually, we did a show here, Rob.
I didn't think we could.
Just the talking like we normally do. Quite honestly, that we have get together a couple times when Rob is in town, and so this is what that's all about. So we encourage you. We did get one message from a gentleman that said we should talk more about local politics, local things, and so on. After this election, we'll probably do that. Anyway. Without further ado, we'll say goodbye tonight, and
and that gentleman's name is Gary. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. And maybe you can come on the show, Gary. It's free. All you got to do, and we won't embarrass you. You can just do it. You can do whatever you want.
In fact,
anyway,
considering us, you'll
you're
probably look
invited,
good.
Gary. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll see you again.